Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm excited to share with you a thrilling story called The Archivist of Forgotten Futures, a tale of secrets, choices, and the power to shape destiny. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into this adventure together. Prologue. Beneath the sprawling skyline of New Avalon, hidden far below the gleaming towers and bustling streets, lay a place that no citizen knew existed, the Archive of Forgotten Futures. Deep within the earth, sealed by centuries-old secrets and guarded by technology older than nations, the archive pulsed softly like the slow heartbeat of the planet itself. It was here that every possibility of human history was captured, recorded, and sealed away in silent corridors of infinite potential. Every choice made by every being spun out new branches of reality. Futures that almost happened, moments that might have changed everything. These were the lifeblood of the archive. And now, Thomas Reed stood before its vast steel doors, the weight of destiny settling like a stone in his chest. "Are you ready?" The voice of Mr. Gray echoed beside him, low and grave, as the old archivist keyed the massive entrance open. The air hissed with the release of ancient pressure, and a gust of cold, sterile wind swept past them. Thomas swallowed, heart hammering. "I think so," he lied. Mr. Gray's lined face showed no emotion. "You should not lie to yourself here. The archive listens. It remembers. And it has a way of showing you the truth when you least desire it." Thomas said nothing. His fingertips brushed against the small leather satchel slung over his shoulder, the only personal belonging he was allowed to bring. Inside, a notebook, a worn fountain pen, and a photograph of his sister, lost to him in one of those forgotten futures. They stepped into the corridor. Glass walls lined either side, stretching endlessly into the dim distance. But these were no ordinary panes. Within each flickered silent, looping images, small fragments of what might have been. Thomas watched, transfixed, as a woman in medieval armor defeated an entire army single-handedly. A child in a suit of wings soared above a city of crystal towers. A broken earth, consumed by fire, spinning slowly against the void. "These are echoes," Mr. Gray murmured, "forgotten by time, preserved by us. Our duty is to keep them safe, hidden, undisturbed." "Why?" Thomas found his voice again, rough and quiet. "Why not show the world? Let them learn from what almost was." The old archivist turned his pale eyes toward him. "Because humanity fears its own potential more than its failures. Show them what they could have become, and they may burn the world down trying to chase it." They stopped at a sealed chamber. A smooth black door, unmarked but humming softly, as if whispering secrets in a tongue older than speech. "This," Mr. Gray said, "is your file. Your lives. Every thread, every decision not taken. Rule number 1, Thomas. Never open your own file. The burden of knowing one's forgotten futures is too great. It destroys all who try." Thomas stared at the door, feeling a chill run down his spine. Behind that smooth surface lay answers to every what-if that had ever haunted him. The life where he'd saved his sister. The life where he'd died young. The life where he'd conquered the stars, or destroyed them. "Do you understand?" Gray's voice broke his trance. "Yes. Never open my own file." The old man nodded. "Good. Because once you do, you can never close it again." They moved on, deeper into the archive. Past wings marked with symbols Thomas could not read. Past rooms where vast, humming machines calculated probability patterns of entire civilizations. Past records so ancient they bore the dust of prehistory itself. At last they reached the core, an immense spherical chamber, its walls alive with shifting light. Here the master quantum engine of the archive spun, processing the infinite branches of fate, collapsing and storing them in crystalline memory vaults. "This is the heart of everything," Mr. Gray said. "Your post will be here. Alone. Watching. Recording. Intervening only when protocol demands. The archive is patient, Thomas. It watches across centuries. It waits. So must you." Thomas felt the weight of eternity settle on his shoulders. He was the new guardian of possibility itself. As Mr. Gray turned to leave, his voice drifted back. "Rule number 2. Trust nothing you see here. Not even your own eyes. The archive can lie. It has done so before." Then he was gone, leaving Thomas Reed alone with the silent futures of all mankind. And behind him in the darkness, the door to his file glowed faintly, as if waiting. Chapter 1. The Arrival. Thomas awoke in his new quarters with the distant hum of the archive's core vibrating through the metal walls. There were no windows, no clocks, no sense of time passing. The archive was timeless, untouched by sunrise or moonrise. Here, moments were measured only in probabilities and collapsed timelines. His room was small and bare, a bed, a desk, and a single locked terminal, the interface to the endless archive. A faint blue light pulsed in the corner, casting shifting shadows across the walls like flickering ghosts. He dressed in the simple archivist's uniform, black, unadorned, utilitarian. No insignia, no personal markings. The archive tolerated no individual pride. Only duty. Sophia Marlowe was waiting for him at the Eastern Transit lift when he emerged. She stood leaning casually against the polished steel wall, arms folded, eyes glinting like dark sapphires beneath short-cropped hair. "New kid survived the first night," she said with a small smile. Thomas tried to smile back, but it felt stiff. Hard to sleep when the walls whisper. "You'll get used to it. Or you won't. Either way, you're here now." She straightened and gestured for him to follow. "Come on. Your first real tour." The lift moved silently, descending deeper into the labyrinth. As they passed the glass corridors again, Thomas couldn't help but glance at the flickering visions. A world of endless sand where great machines crawled like insects. Another where cities floated high above the clouds, untethered to earth. "Don't stare too long," Sophia warned gently. "Some of them look back." "They can see us?" She shrugged. "Some versions of you are standing right there, looking at you now, wondering the same thing. Just a theory. But better not to tempt fate." They passed the Department of Divergent Civilizations, where collapsed timelines from failed empires slumbered in quiet digital tombs. The Department of Historical Deviations came next, a place where files documented worlds where Caesar lived, where Napoleon ruled unchallenged, where the Black Death wiped out 90% of Europe. Finally, they reached the Hall of Probabilities. It stretched far beyond sight, filled with towers of crystalline data vaults that shimmered with living light. Each tower encoded billions of abandoned futures, spinning in silent precision. "This is where you'll spend most of your time," Sophia said. "Monitoring the pattern stability, logging emergent divergences, collapsing the unsustainable ones. The archive likes order. It doesn't tolerate loose threads." Thomas frowned. "Collapsing timelines? You mean destroying them?" "Only the ones that can't sustain themselves. Worlds that spiral into paradox or contradiction. Think of them as broken branches that need pruning." He looked up, awed and unsettled. "So we play God?" "No," she said softly. "We play gardener. There's a difference. Or so we tell ourselves." A distant chime sounded. Sophia touched the interface panel on the nearest vault, and a screen unfolded in the air, showing branching fractals of light, new divergences unfolding in real time. "This is what you'll watch," she explained. "Small changes, big ones. We log them all. Sometimes the system requests human judgment. Sometimes, stranger things happen." "Like what?" "You'll see." She gave him a look he couldn't quite read. "Or you won't. Depends on the archive." They moved on to the deep archive, the lowest level. Here, massive sealed vaults lined the walls, humming with locked energy. Sophia paused before one. The restricted wing. High-grade classified. Only senior archivists go in there. "You? Never." Thomas stared. "What's in there?" She hesitated. Timelines where interference changed everything. Experimental files. Dangerous futures. And personal files. He swallowed, feeling the memory of the black door from yesterday. "Don't even think about it," she warned. "The archive knows when you're tempted." They turned back, but Thomas's thoughts stayed behind, lingering on the sealed vault door. His own futures. His sister. Possibilities unspoken. As they returned to the Hall of Probabilities, Sophia leaned close. "One last thing, rookie. Never assume the archive is passive. It learns. It adapts. It dreams." He glanced at her, startled. "It dreams." She smiled thinly. "You'll see." and as the crystalline towers whispered softly behind them, Thomas Reed knew that his journey into the impossible had only just begun. Chapter 2: The Forbidden File. The day passed in the familiar, quiet rhythm of monitoring divergences. Thomas learned how to identify minor branches, small, harmless futures destined to collapse under their own improbability, and how to report unstable ones for evaluation. But his mind, despite the training, the warnings, the dire instructions of Mr. Gray and Sophia, drifted inexorably back to that sealed door marked with his own name. That evening, alone in the archive, temptation finally triumphed. He stood before the terminal, its sleek surface dark but waiting. His ID token, newly minted and barely used, slipped easily into the slot. The system's faint hum greeted him, a welcoming, conspiratorial whisper. Access level request. Personal future file. Read Thomas A. A warning flashed in red. Unauthorized. Violation of Protocol 7A, penalty, immediate dismissal. His hand hovered over the cancel key, but his heart, his damned, desperate heart, pushed him on. Override command, 7A, bypass/admin. A pause. Then the seal broke. The file unfolded in light before him, and Thomas gasped. It was him, standing on a balcony under a bruised red sky, a pistol in hand, smoke rising behind him. Below, the massive crowd roared not in fear, but in exultation. On the floor of the grand platform lay Chancellor Voss, the man Thomas knew only as a rising political star in the real world, sprawled in a pool of his own dark blood. The screen shifted. New scenes flickered. Parades in Thomas's honor, statues built in his likeness, medals pressed into his palm by world leaders. A voice, his own voice, intoning words of revolution and freedom before adoring millions. A global order reshaped by his hand, toppling tyranny before it could take root. Then darkness. A final fragment. A war-ravaged city, silent and smoking under black skies. His own face staring out from walls on propaganda posters. The Great Liberator, they read. Father of the New Age. Thomas stumbled back from the terminal, heart racing. Was this real? Could this be the future he was destined to prevent, or to create? He shut down the terminal, breath ragged, skin clammy. Sophia found him minutes later in the corridor, pale and shaking. You opened it, she said flatly. He couldn't speak, only nodded. Her face darkened. You weren't supposed to see that. Why is it there? He demanded. Why does the archive show me this? Killing Voss, leading revolutions, becoming that. She hesitated. Her gaze flicked to the security panels. Come with me. Now. Before anyone else notices. She led him down a maintenance corridor, away from the cameras and sensors, into the service depths where only dust and forgotten conduits remained. You were never meant to be just an archivist, she said softly when they were alone. No one is. Not if the archive chooses you. What are you talking about? That file wasn't random. It was placed there, deliberately, as a test, or a warning, maybe both. Thomas's stomach clenched. By who? She looked at him, her eyes fierce. By people who want Voss dead, and they think you can make it happen. The air felt thin, unreal. What if I refuse? He whispered. Then the future you saw will happen anyway, Sophia said, and billions will suffer for it. Voss is worse than you know. You only saw part of what he becomes. How do you know all this? Because, she said grimly, I've seen the other files. The ones you're not supposed to see. I've been working against him for years. And now so will you. The weight of impossible choices pressed down on him. He felt the archive itself watching, listening, dreaming. What do you want me to do? Thomas asked, voice hollow. Sophia leaned closer. Come with me. There's more you need to see. The hidden section. The place where futures aren't just recorded, they're made. And against all reason, against fear and every rule drummed into him, Thomas followed. Chapter 3. The Weight of Knowledge. The descent into the hidden section felt like slipping into a forgotten dream. Thomas followed Sophia through darkened corridors, the lights flickering softly as if reluctant to illuminate their passage. Pipes lined the ceilings, whispering steam and old air. Forgotten cables hung like vines, long unused but pulsing faintly with residual energy. We shouldn't be down here, Sophia murmured, her voice hushed and tight. Technically, this area is sealed. Off limits even to senior archivists. But there are things you need to see. Things that the directorate doesn't want you, or anyone else, to know. Thomas felt the weight of the archive pressing down on him, like an ocean above his head. Every step they took seemed to awaken echoes in the walls, faint sounds of distant laughter, weeping, whispers in languages no human mouth had ever spoken. At last they reached a steel bulkhead door, its surface marked with strange, shimmering runes that shifted and rearranged themselves when he stared too long. Sophia pressed her palm against a hidden scanner, and the door hissed open, revealing a chamber bathed in soft blue light. The hidden section. Rows upon rows of crystalline data cores lined the walls, each one spinning slowly, casting prismatic rainbows onto the floor. But these were unlike any Thomas had seen. Their shapes flickered and changed, showing impossible geometries, twisting in on themselves, defying logic and sanity. These are the forbidden timelines, Sophia said quietly. Futures that never should have existed. Realities so unstable, so dangerous, that they were locked away here. Some were created, not naturally spawned. Experiments. Interventions. Violations. Thomas shivered. Created? You mean someone made these futures? Yes. And worse, some of them were tested. Released into the stream to see what would happen. Controlled collapses, engineered disasters. The archive isn't just a record of what could have been. It's a forge for shaping what will be. She gestured toward a nearby console and keyed in a sequence. A projection flared to life, displaying a web of branching timelines all centered on a single point. Chancellor Voss. Look at this, she said grimly. Every major timeline where Voss rises unchecked leads to catastrophe. World wars. Genocides. Extinction events. But there are others, hidden threads where his rise is cut short. Usually by assassination. Usually by you. Thomas stared, heart sinking. Why me? Why am I always the one? Because the archive chose you. Or maybe the people who control the archive did. Maybe both. You've been guided here for a reason. Everything in your life, the losses, the failures, the placement here, was part of the pattern. I don't want this, he whispered. I don't want to kill anyone. No one ever does, Sophia said softly. But this isn't about what you want. It's about what's necessary. Unless you act, Voss will rise. And the world will burn. Billions will die. Thomas turned away from the projections, nausea rising. How do you know this? How can you be sure? She hesitated, then keyed another sequence into the console. A different projection appeared. A record of another Thomas Reed from a divergent timeline. This Thomas had refused the call. Had walked away. And in that future, New Avalon burned. The skies were filled with ash. The streets ran red. Towering machines of war stalked the land. And Voss ruled from a citadel of iron and fear. The world had become a grave. This is what happens if you do nothing, Sophia said. I've seen hundreds of versions. They all end the same. Unless you stop him. Thomas sank to his knees, overwhelmed by the crushing weight of destiny. I don't know if I can do this, he breathed. Sophia knelt beside him. You're stronger than you think. The archive wouldn't have chosen you otherwise. And you won't be alone. There are others who know, who can help. But you must decide, Thomas. The future is watching. The lights of the data cores pulsed softly, like the beat of a distant heart. Thomas looked up, determination flickering in his eyes. Show me everything. Show me what I need to do. Sophia nodded. Then come. We have much to prepare. The choice of reality itself lies in your hands. And together, they rose and walked deeper into the archive's forbidden depths, toward the futures yet to be written. Chapter 4. The Hidden Section. The corridor to the hidden section stretched far longer than Thomas had imagined. The walls, once pristine steel, turned rough and ancient as if the archive's very bones were being revealed. Symbols from forgotten civilizations, Atlantean glyphs, Sumerian scrawls, mathematical equations from lost alien races, scrawled the walls in chaotic harmony. This wing shouldn't exist, Sophia said under her breath. It was sealed after the experiment wars of 2094. But some of us know the codes. They arrived at another vault door, this one black as obsidian, smooth and cold under Sophia's palm as she keyed in a long-forgotten override. The door groaned, ancient gears twisting, and opened into darkness. Flickering pale light revealed a chamber vast as a cathedral, the air filled with drifting motes of golden data dust. Here the walls were transparent, and behind them hung timelines in stasis. Whole worlds frozen in the moment before destruction or salvation. Each pulsed with unreadable energy, like hearts trying to remember how to beat. "Welcome to the Experiment Archive," Sophia whispered. "The place where timelines were born and died." Thomas stared in horror and wonder. One timeline showed New Avalon submerged beneath black waters, alien sea creatures building spires where skyscrapers once stood. Another showed Earth as a barren wasteland, the sun dimmed, machines crawling endlessly across the dead surface. "These were manufactured futures," Sophia explained. "Deliberate interventions. Controlled scenarios. Tests. Some by the Directorate. Some by others." "Who?" Thomas asked softly. "The builders. The first archivists. Whoever created the archive itself. Their motives are lost. Their experiments remain." And some woke up. A sudden low hum vibrated the floor beneath their feet. One of the timelines flickered violently. A city burning, figures running, screaming, their faces shifting, melting into monstrous forms. The stasis field barely held. "What was that?" Thomas gasped. "A timeline that broke containment once," Sophia said. "We trapped it again." "Barely. There are worse ones. Timelines that think. That hunger. Never open a containment file without full lockdown." They moved deeper. Ahead lay a sealed plinth, atop which floated a crystalline orb, black at its core, veined with silver light. "This," Sophia said with reverence, "is the anchor future. The prime node from which all Voss futures diverge. If this is destroyed, the whole cluster collapses, including his rise to power." Thomas felt the pull of the orb, the sense of infinite weight and possibility. It pulsed as he approached, glowing faintly in time with his heartbeat. "Could we change it?" he whispered. "Alter this one point and stop everything?" Sophia shook her head. "No. The risk is too great. Collapse this node and you collapse too many timelines, including ours. The damage would be irreversible. Then what are we here for?" She led him to a side console and activated another projection. A vision of the Resistance's secret plan. "We'll create a shadow divergence," she said. "A hidden branch where you act without disrupting the primary stream. A surgical strike." "Assassination," Thomas murmured. "Yes. In this shadow future, Voss dies. The archive corrects the surface flow. The world adjusts slowly, gently. No shock collapse. No cascade failure." Thomas stared at the shimmering light strands, each representing a possible reality. It was all so fragile, so easy to break. "When?" he asked. "Soon. The Unity Summit. Voss's appearance there is the convergence point. The last moment before his rise becomes irreversible. You have until then." A chill ran through Thomas's veins. "And if I fail? Then Voss ascends. Billions die. And the archive records another tragedy." She touched his shoulder. "No pressure." He managed a hollow laugh. But in his heart, fear bloomed like poison. "Come," Sophia said gently. "The hidden section has shown you what is at stake. Now we plan. The future waits for no one." And together they stepped away from the forbidden chamber, the lights dimming behind them as the broken timelines slumbered once more. Chapter 5. The Choice of Reality. The days that followed their forbidden journey into the hidden section were the longest of Thomas's life. He couldn't eat. He couldn't sleep. Whenever he closed his eyes, the burning cities of failed futures haunted him. The faces of the dead, billions of them, stared at him from the darkness. Sophia kept him busy. "Planning. Training. Preparing. You have to act without hesitation," she told him as they crouched in a forgotten maintenance hall, far from the eyes of the Directorate's monitors. She placed a small, sleek pistol in his palm. The weapon designed not only to kill but to erase. Archive disruptor. Single shot. It'll collapse the target's timeline thread so fast even the archive can't restitch it. Voss won't just die. He'll vanish from every future. Thomas stared at the weapon, its surface humming faintly like a living thing. No body, no trace. Nothing. One shot. Clean. Absolute. That's murder on a cosmic scale, he muttered. Sophia didn't flinch. It's survival. You saw the futures. There's no other way. The Unity Summit was days away. Voss would stand on the grand dais, announcing the foundation of the Global Directorate. Once that speech was made, the pattern would solidify, and the tyrant's rule would become inevitable. What if I miss? Thomas whispered in the quiet of the archive's observation deck. Sophia stood beside him, arms crossed. Then hope dies, and history spirals into darkness. Thomas turned to face her. How do you live with this? With deciding who dies and who lives? She smiled, but there was no joy in it. I don't. But someone has to make the choice. Better us than the Directorate. They've been shaping history in secret for centuries. You saw the experiments, the collapses, the dead timelines. They would see the world burn to remake it. We want to save it. Thomas closed his eyes, breathing deeply. When do I go? Tomorrow. We've arranged everything. You'll pass as a security technician. Get close to the dais. Take the shot at precisely 11:17 a.m. Before his speech. Before the pattern locks. And if the Directorate realizes what I'm doing? Then you run. Fast. Or you don't run at all. Thomas felt the weight of reality pressing down on him. Futures untold shifted and swirled around him like fog. One choice. One shot. A universe depending on his trembling hand. That night, alone in his quarters, he stared at the disruptor. His thoughts raced. What if they were wrong? What if Sophia was lying? What if killing Voss triggered something worse? Then he remembered the other him, the broken, aged version who had begged him to act. Do it or lose everything. In the silent dark, Thomas made his choice. He would act. At dawn, the path to the summit lay waiting. Chapter 6. The mission begins. The morning of the Unity Summit arrived beneath a cold gray sky. New Avalon stood silent, its gleaming towers and sky bridges swathed in mist as if the city itself held its breath. Thomas dressed in the stolen technician's uniform, the disruptor concealed in a maintenance kit slung over his shoulder. The device was small, unremarkable, its lethality masked by simplicity. One shot to end a tyrant's future. One chance to change the course of history. Sophia met him at the transit dock, her face pale but resolute. She handed him a small earpiece. Stay connected. I'll guide you in. The Directorate will be watching every entrance. Thomas took it, slipping the piece into his ear. And if they stop me? They won't, Sophia said with quiet certainty. I've cleared your path. But once you cross the security perimeter, you're on your own. The hovercraft docked outside the summit plaza. Dignitaries, journalists, and security personnel flowed like a river of anticipation toward the grand auditorium where Voss would soon speak. Posters bearing his face adorned the walls. Voss, a new dawn for humanity. Thomas moved through the crowd, heart pounding, eyes scanning for threats. Directorate agents in gray suits stood at intervals, scanning passes, watching faces. His forged ID cleared the first checkpoint. Then the second. Good, Sophia whispered in his ear. You're through. Head to the central maintenance access. South wall. He obeyed, weaving past throngs of delegates and technicians, slipping into the shadowed service corridor behind the main dais. The disruptor was warm in his hand now, humming softly with lethal energy. Almost there, Sophia murmured. 30 meters. The observation port above the stage. Perfect line of sight. But something felt wrong. A flicker of movement. A shadow where none should be. Thomas, stop. 2 agents approaching. Directorate. Sophia's voice snapped sharp. Hide. Now. He ducked into a maintenance alcove as 2 gray-suited figures strode past, murmuring into wrist comms. Their eyes swept the corridor but moved on. Clear. Go, Sophia urged. Thomas slipped from hiding, heart hammering, sweat cold on his skin. He reached the observation port, crouched behind the polarized glass. Below, the grand stage stretched out, a gleaming platform of steel and light. At its center, the podium awaited. And there, emerging into the spotlight, was Chancellor Voss. He looked calm, confident, a living symbol of the future his directorate promised. The crowd cheered as he raised his hand. "Now," Sophia breathed. "Take the shot." Thomas raised the disruptor. His finger tightened on the trigger. But his mind reeled. Doubt flooded him. Could he kill in cold blood? Could he erase an entire life from history? An entire thread of possibility? "Thomas." Sophia's voice sharpened. "Do it." He hesitated. And in that moment, everything changed. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Directorate security swarmed the stage. Someone had tipped them off. "They know," Sophia gasped. "Abort, get out now." But Thomas didn't run. Instead, he lowered the disruptor, turned, and fled deeper into the service corridors as chaos erupted behind him. His mission had failed. Or perhaps, just begun. Chapter 6. The mission begins. The morning of the Unity Summit arrived beneath a cold gray sky. New Avalon stood silent, its gleaming towers and sky bridges swathed in mist as if the city itself held its breath. Thomas dressed in the stolen technician's uniform, the disruptor concealed in a maintenance kit slung over his shoulder. The device was small, unremarkable, its lethality masked by simplicity. One shot to end a tyrant's future. One chance to change the course of history. Sophia met him at the transit dock, her face pale but resolute. She handed him a small earpiece. "Stay connected. I'll guide you in. The directorate will be watching every entrance." Thomas took it, slipping the piece into his ear. "And if they stop me?" "They won't," Sophia said with quiet certainty. "I've cleared your path. But once you cross the security perimeter, you're on your own." The hovercraft docked outside the summit plaza. Dignitaries, journalists, and security personnel flowed like a river of anticipation toward the grand auditorium where Voss would soon speak. Posters bearing his face adorned the walls. "Voss, a new dawn for humanity." Thomas moved through the crowd, heart pounding, eyes scanning for threats. Directorate agents in gray suits stood at intervals, scanning passes, watching faces. His forged ID cleared the first checkpoint. Then the second. "Good," Sophia whispered in his ear. "You're through. Head to the central maintenance access. South wall." He obeyed, weaving past throngs of delegates and technicians, slipping into the shadowed service corridor behind the main dais. The disruptor was warm in his hand now, humming softly with lethal energy. "Almost there," Sophia murmured. 30 meters. The observation port above the stage. Perfect line of sight. But something felt wrong. A flicker of movement. A shadow where none should be. "Thomas, stop." 2 agents approaching. "Directorate." Sophia's voice snapped sharp. "Hide. Now." He ducked into a maintenance alcove as 2 gray-suited figures strode past, murmuring into wrist comms. Their eyes swept the corridor but moved on. "Clear. Go," Sophia urged. Thomas slipped from hiding, heart hammering, sweat cold on his skin. He reached the observation port, crouched behind the polarized glass. Below, the grand stage stretched out, a gleaming platform of steel and light. At its center, the podium awaited. And there, emerging into the spotlight, was Chancellor Voss. He looked calm, confident, a living symbol of the future his directorate promised. The crowd cheered as he raised his hand. "Now," Sophia breathed. "Take the shot." Thomas raised the disruptor. His finger tightened on the trigger. But his mind reeled. Doubt flooded him. Could he kill in cold blood? Could he erase an entire life from history? An entire thread of possibility? "Thomas." Sophia's voice sharpened. "Do it." He hesitated. And in that moment, everything changed. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Directorate security swarmed the stage. Someone had tipped them off. "They know." Sophia gasped. "Abort, get out now." But Thomas didn't run. Instead, he lowered the disruptor, turned, and fled deeper into the service corridors as chaos erupted behind him. His mission had failed. Or perhaps, just begun. Chapter 6. The mission begins. The morning of the Unity Summit arrived beneath a cold gray sky. New Avalon stood silent, its gleaming towers and sky bridges swathed in mist as if the city itself held its breath. Thomas dressed in the stolen technician's uniform, the disruptor concealed in a maintenance kit slung over his shoulder. The device was small, unremarkable, its lethality masked by simplicity. One shot to end a tyrant's future. One chance to change the course of history. Sophia met him at the transit dock, her face pale but resolute. She handed him a small earpiece. "Stay connected. I'll guide you in. The directorate will be watching every entrance." Thomas took it, slipping the piece into his ear. "And if they stop me?" "They won't," Sophia said with quiet certainty. "I've cleared your path. But once you cross the security perimeter, you're on your own." The hovercraft docked outside the summit plaza. Dignitaries, journalists, and security personnel flowed like a river of anticipation toward the grand auditorium where Voss would soon speak. Posters bearing his face adorned the walls. "Voss, a new dawn for humanity." Thomas moved through the crowd, heart pounding, eyes scanning for threats. Directorate agents in gray suits stood at intervals, scanning passes, watching faces. His forged ID cleared the first checkpoint. Then the second. "Good," Sophia whispered in his ear. "You're through. Head to the central maintenance access. South wall." He obeyed, weaving past throngs of delegates and technicians, slipping into the shadowed service corridor behind the main dais. The disruptor was warm in his hand now, humming softly with lethal energy. "Almost there," Sophia murmured. 30 meters. The observation port above the stage. Perfect line of sight. But something felt wrong. A flicker of movement. A shadow where none should be. "Thomas, stop. 2 agents approaching. Directorate." Sophia's voice snapped sharp. "Hide. Now." He ducked into a maintenance alcove as 2 gray-suited figures strode past, murmuring into wrist comms. Their eyes swept the corridor but moved on. "Clear. Go," Sophia urged. Thomas slipped from hiding, heart hammering, sweat cold on his skin. He reached the observation port, crouched behind the polarized glass. Below, the grand stage stretched out. A gleaming platform of steel and light. At its center, the podium awaited. And there, emerging into the spotlight, was Chancellor Voss. He looked calm, confident, a living symbol of the future his directorate promised. The crowd cheered as he raised his hand. "Now," Sophia breathed. "Take the shot." Thomas raised the disruptor. His finger tightened on the trigger. But his mind reeled. Doubt flooded him. Could he kill in cold blood? Could he erase an entire life from history? An entire thread of possibility? "Thomas." Sophia's voice sharpened. "Do it." He hesitated. And in that moment everything changed. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Directorate security swarmed the stage. Someone had tipped them off. "They know," Sophia gasped. "Abort, get out now." But Thomas didn't run. Instead, he lowered the disruptor, turned, and fled deeper into the service corridors as chaos erupted behind him. His mission had failed. Or perhaps, just begun. Chapter 6. The mission begins. The morning of the Unity Summit arrived beneath a cold gray sky. New Avalon stood silent, its gleaming towers and sky bridges swathed in mist as if the city itself held its breath. Thomas dressed in the stolen technician's uniform, the disruptor concealed in a maintenance kit slung over his shoulder. The device was small, unremarkable, its lethality masked by simplicity. One shot to end a tyrant's future. One chance to change the course of history. Sophia met him at the transit dock, her face pale but resolute. She handed him a small earpiece. "Stay connected. I'll guide you in. The directorate will be watching every entrance." Thomas took it, slipping the piece into his ear. "And if they stop me?" "They won't," Sophia said with quiet certainty. "I've cleared your path. But once you cross the security perimeter, you're on your own." The hovercraft docked outside the summit plaza. Dignitaries, journalists, and security personnel flowed like a river of anticipation toward the grand auditorium where Voss would soon speak. Posters bearing his face adorned the walls. "Voss, a new dawn for humanity." Thomas moved through the crowd, heart pounding, eyes scanning for threats. Directorate agents in gray suits stood at intervals, scanning passes, watching faces. His forged ID cleared the first checkpoint. Then the second. "Good," Sophia whispered in his ear. "You're through. Head to the central maintenance access. South wall." He obeyed, weaving past throngs of delegates and technicians, slipping into the shadowed service corridor behind the main dais. The disruptor was warm in his hand now, humming softly with lethal energy. "Almost there," Sophia murmured. 30 meters. The observation port above the stage. Perfect line of sight. But something felt wrong. A flicker of movement. A shadow where none should be. "Thomas, stop." 2 agents approaching. "Directorate." Sophia's voice snapped sharp. "Hide. Now." He ducked into a maintenance alcove as 2 gray-suited figures strode past, murmuring into wrist comms. Their eyes swept the corridor but moved on. "Clear. Go," Sophia urged. Thomas slipped from hiding, heart hammering, sweat cold on his skin. He reached the observation port, crouched behind the polarized glass. Below, the grand stage stretched out, a gleaming platform of steel and light. At its center, the podium awaited. And there, emerging into the spotlight, was Chancellor Voss. He looked calm, confident, a living symbol of the future his directorate promised. The crowd cheered as he raised his hand. "Now," Sophia breathed. "Take the shot." Thomas raised the disruptor. His finger tightened on the trigger. But his mind reeled. Doubt flooded him. Could he kill in cold blood? Could he erase an entire life from history? An entire thread of possibility? "Thomas." Sophia's voice sharpened. "Do it." He hesitated. And in that moment, everything changed. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Directorate security swarmed the stage. Someone had tipped them off. "They know," Sophia gasped. "Abort, get out now." But Thomas didn't run. Instead, he lowered the disruptor, turned, and fled deeper into the service corridors as chaos erupted behind him. His mission had failed. Or perhaps just begun. Chapter 7. Collapse and Escape. Chaos erupted through the underground corridors as Directorate agents poured in, sealing exits and activating lockdown protocols. Thomas ran, his breath ragged, heart pounding as alarms echoed off cold concrete walls. The disruptor, once a symbol of hope, now felt like a weight threatening to crush him. Behind him, the sounds of pursuit grew closer. Sophia's voice crackled urgently in his earpiece. "Turn left at the next junction. There's a maintenance shaft." He obeyed, sliding through narrow passages barely wide enough to squeeze. His mind raced, plans unraveling, futures crumbling around him. Every decision seemed to tighten the noose. Suddenly, a wall of force slammed into him, knocking the wind from his lungs. 2 Directorate enforcers loomed, faces grim and unyielding. Thomas stumbled, fighting desperation and fear. "You can't run from fate," one snarled. But before they could seize him, a sudden explosion rocked the corridor, sending shards of concrete flying. Sophia appeared through the smoke, her eyes fierce. "Go. I'll hold them off." Thomas hesitated, torn between loyalty and survival. "No time," she shouted. "Live to fight another day." He nodded, adrenaline surging, and darted into the maintenance shaft as the world behind him burned. The shaft was narrow and dark, descending deep beneath the archive's foundations. He clung to cold metal rungs, every muscle screaming, until he reached an emergency exit. Emerging into the shadowed city streets, Thomas took a moment to catch his breath. The Unity Summit raged on somewhere above, but he was alone. Hunted, uncertain, but still alive. His mission had failed, but the future was not yet sealed. And somewhere, deep within the archive, the sealed door to his personal file glowed faintly, as if beckoning. Thomas Reed knew his fight was only beginning. Chapter 8. Allies in the Shadows. The cold night air of New Avalon bit into Thomas's skin as he slipped through the labyrinthine alleys far from the summit's chaos. Every shadow seemed to watch him, every distant footstep echoed with threat. He knew the Directorate's hunt for him had only just begun. A sudden vibration in his pocket startled him. Sophia's encrypted message, "Meet at the old clock tower. Midnight. Trust no one." His heart pounded. The old clock tower, long abandoned, was a relic of a forgotten era. Its broken face frozen at midnight, a perfect symbol of time standing still. Thomas arrived cautiously, scanning the darkness. A figure emerged, a woman, tall and cloaked, her eyes sharp and calculating. "I'm Lyra," she said softly. "Former archivist. Like you, I walk the line between futures. I'm here to help. Why help me? You don't even know me, Thomas replied warily. Because I've seen what happens when the archive's power falls into the wrong hands. Voss isn't just a tyrant, he's a catalyst for destruction. But there are others who resist, operating in the shadows. She handed him a small data chip. Inside are safe routes, contact points, and a plan to expose the Directorate's secrets to the world. Thomas felt hope flicker. Allies meant strength, and strength meant a chance. But it won't be easy, Lyra warned. They have eyes everywhere. We move carefully or we die quietly. Together, they vanished into the night, two shadows against the sprawling city. A fragile alliance forged in the desperate hope of rewriting tomorrow. Chapter 9, The Web Titans. Days blurred as Thomas and Lyra navigated the underbelly of New Avalon, dodging Directorate patrols and surveillance drones. Every safe house they reached felt temporary, every contact a potential traitor. The city was a spider's web, and the Directorate its unyielding predator. Thomas reviewed the data chip's contents. Blueprints of hidden tunnels, encrypted communication channels, lists of sympathizers within the archive itself. Each discovery revealed more about the vast conspiracy woven into the very fabric of their reality. One evening, as rain pounded against cracked windows of their refuge, an urgent message arrived. Sophia's voice, distorted but urgent. They know about the chip. The Directorate's closing in faster than we thought. You need to move. Panic rose, but Thomas clenched his jaw. We can't stop now. Lyra nodded grimly. They're tightening the noose. But there's one chance left, a broadcast signal, deep within the city's oldest transmitter tower. If we can hijack it, expose the Directorate's plans, we might rally the world. Thomas felt the weight of the moment. The future balanced precariously on their shoulders. We do it, he said quietly. Outside, thunder rolled, a prelude to the storm ahead. Chapter 10, The Broadcast. Under the cover of darkness, Thomas, Lyra, and a small group of trusted allies made their way toward the ancient transmitter tower at the city's edge. The tower loomed like a forgotten sentinel, its rusted metal frame creaking in the wind. Security was tight. Directorate patrols circled, their scanners slicing through the night. Every step forward was a gamble. Inside the tower, the team moved swiftly. Lyra hacked the mainframe, bypassing encrypted locks with practiced ease while Thomas stood guard. Disruptor concealed but ready. Almost there, Lyra whispered, sweat beading her brow. Suddenly, the sound of boots echoed from below, reinforcements closing in. Get ready, Thomas warned. With a final keystroke, Lyra unleashed the broadcast. Screens across New Avalon flickered, then lit up with undeniable proof. Footage of Directorate conspiracies, the experiments in the archive, Voss's ruthless plans. The city erupted in chaos. Protesters flooded the streets, sirens blared, and the Directorate scrambled to contain the damage. But in the heart of the tower, Thomas and Lyra knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 11, Fractures in the System. The broadcast sent shockwaves through New Avalon and beyond. The Directorate's carefully constructed facade began to crumble as citizens demanded answers, and allies within the archive stepped out of the shadows. But power is rarely relinquished quietly. Voss's grip tightened. Emergency protocols activated, and the archive went into lockdown. Surveillance intensified. Trusted contacts vanished, and paranoia poisoned every corridor. Thomas and Lyra found themselves hunted not only by external forces, but also by traitors within their own ranks. Doubt not at their alliance. One night, as alarms blared and the city trembled, Thomas received an encrypted message from an unknown source. Trust no one. The archive itself is awakening. The words chilled him. The archive was no longer just a repository of futures. It was becoming an active force, unpredictable and dangerous. As the world fractured around him, Thomas realized the battle was no longer just against Voss or the Directorate. It was against time itself. Chapter 12, The Final Reckoning. The city lay shrouded in chaos. The archive's power surged unpredictably, timelines collapsing and reforming around Thomas and his allies. The boundaries between past, present, and future blurred, threatening to unravel reality itself. In the heart of the archive, Thomas confronted Voss one last time. No weapons, no tricks, just a battle of wills. Why fight fate? Voss asked, eyes burning with certainty. Because fate is what we choose, Thomas replied. Not some pre-written script. With a surge of strength born from hope and determination, Thomas activated the disruptor. Not to kill, but to sever the chains binding their realities, freeing the future from tyranny. Light exploded, timelines fractured, and when the dust settled, a new dawn broke over New Avalon, one of freedom, choice, and endless possibility. Epilogue, a message to the viewers. Thank you for joining the journey of the Archivist of Forgotten Futures. This story reminds us that while the future may hold uncertainty, it is shaped by the choices we make today. If you enjoyed this tale, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that explore the edge of possibility. What would you do if you could rewrite your future? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep fighting, and never stop believing in the power of your own story.